Dear sisters and brothers, dear President, dear colleagues here in the room, Owen, Jordania and Erik, dear Liz, dear delegates, thank you. Thank you for your support that I received from you in the run-up and during this election. It is really an honor and a privilege to lead this organization, together with a strong team of staff members and elected officers, but also together with you, all our member organizations. Because that's what I think it is. Ensuring a strong ITUC, politically powerful and financially healthy, that can improve the interests and conditions for working women and men throughout the world is a matter of teamwork. It is not the merit of one person. It is the result of our joint collaboration. The General Secretary is just one piece in a complex whole. That's why I call on you to not lose sight of our goal together. Standing up for workers, standing up for the weakest in our world, in unity. We owe that to our members. The world, dear comrades, is at a crossroads of converging crises. Global shocks to economies and societies set off by the COVID pandemic and military conflicts have exacerbated pre-existing vulnerabilities and undermined the already slow progress that we had seen at global level in the fight against poverty and inequalities. All this is happening in a context where our world is going through serious geopolitical storms. There are armed conflicts in every region, and military coups are again the order of the day in many places. The global race for more armaments has never really gone away, but it is now accelerating again. World military expenditure grew by 19% over the last decade to reach a record high of over $2 trillion. We all see that the daily reality is moving into the wrong direction. Refugee flows, usually from those who are weakest in society, are increasing. At the start of this year, over 100 million, or since the start of this year, over 100 million people had fled war, violence, and persecution. And the impacts of climate change are driving more and more people to flee. As a trade union movement, we are at the heart of the peace movement, and we must continue to strive for dialogue to resolve existing conflicts and prevent new ones. This helps our members. This helps the weakest in our societies. Striving for peace is striving also for democracy. The failure of governments over many years to ensure the social contract is driving more and more people to the political extremes, fueling the extreme right, exposing the vulnerable and eroding solidarity. The global architecture for peace and democracy must be underpinned by the new social contracts at the global, but also at your national level. And what we see is also that the line between autocracies and democracy are blurring. When dialogue between states and the people breaks down, when nations flirt with autocracy to pass unpopular laws, when parliaments are put aside, when governments deploy state forces to quell lawful resistance, democracy is on the line and working people suffer the consequences. Across the world, we continue to see social regression rather than social progress. Authoritarian government responses to the different crises are on the rise, and the interest of companies, ultra-rich oligarchs, and the finance sector continue to predominate over the well-being of the majority of the population. And besides the direct and indirect consequences of war in a difficult geopolitical context, where workers are also suffering from the climate crisis, the food and energy crisis, and high inflation, which continues to undermine their purchasing power, pushing many of them further into poverty. Interest rate rises have worsened the debt crisis in many countries around the world due to outdated and discredited economic theories, still pushed by some central banks that ignore the impact of price increases by companies and place all the responsibility on workers. This threatens public services, investment in creation of decent jobs, and social spending that is so needed for a human-centered recovery. The state of social justice in the world should shame us all. The top 1% has taken 38% of all wealth accumulated since the 90s, whereas the bottom 50% has gained over 2%, and 685 million people still live in extreme poverty. Over 50 million workers are in modern slavery, and at least 160 million children remain in child labor, with numbers going up again after decades of decline. Every year, 3 million workers die at the workplace, and hundreds of millions are injured or made ill because of work. More than 60% are working in the informal economy without any labor protection, and 4 billion are excluded from social protection. These sobering numbers can surely leave none of us untouched. This is an unacceptable reality. And when it comes to workers' rights, attacks are on the rise everywhere in the world. There are no regions anymore where we can take workers' rights for granted. In June this year, we launched the 10th edition of our ITUC Global Rights Index. This index shows us clearly that the problem of attacks on workers' rights is big and getting bigger. It provides shocking evidence that the foundations of democracy are under attack, with a clear link between workers' rights being upheld and the strength of any democracy. The erosion of one amounts to the degradation of the other. Across the world, in both high-income and low-income countries, even though working people have faced an historic cost of living crisis and spiraling inflation driven by corporate greed, governments have cracked down on the right to collectively negotiate wage rises and take strike action. Indeed, when even the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank share our analysis that corporate greed is driving inflation, we must not accept that failed policies of austerity, neither we have to accept a free ride for corporations. And this goes hand in hand with ever-increasing tax evasion by the same companies. Tax the rich must be more than a slogan. It's now time for legally binding action. Workers are paying the price. 9 out of 10 countries violated the right to strike. We are in a global fight to maintain this right. Our recent procedure at the ILO to secure that the right to strike is a core part of guaranteeing freedom of association is essential. It's about our fundamental tool that has brought us so far in getting better working and pay conditions for workers. 8 out of 10 countries violated the right to collective bargaining. 3 out of 4 countries excluded working people from the right to establish or join a trade union. The right to free speech and assembly was restricted in nearly 1 out of 2 countries, often resulting in protesting workers facing police brutality. Workers experience violence in 44 countries. And in at least 8 countries, we have evidence of killed trade unionists. brothers or sisters, part of our movement. Last week, we received reports of new killings on trade unionists in the Philippines and in Guatemala. These attacks on rights and the lives of trade unionists, and indeed the converging crisis that we are facing, need an all-encompassing response that will build more sustainable and resilient societies. A transformative agenda with social justice at the center. The ITUC Congress last year launched our global trade union demand for a new social contract. It is our program to create a peaceful world with decent and climate-friendly jobs for all, with just transition at the center, with robust systems for public health and care. It calls for, our new social contract calls for, the creation of decent and climate-friendly jobs for all through investments in strategic economic sectors such as care and sustainable infrastructure with just transitions and the formalization of informal work. It calls for right for all workers, regardless of their employment status as promised in the ILO Centenary Declaration. It also calls for living minimum wages, pay rises to face the cost of living crisis, and real and rapid progress on equal pay for women and men. At the current speed, women will only be paid equal wages in 257 years from now. It also calls for universal social protection, for equality, ending all discrimination on the basis of gender, race, or any grounds. And our new social contract also calls for inclusion, with a truly inclusive multilateral system and fundamental reform of international trade and finance. And colleagues, equality. Equality must also apply just as much within the trade union movement, in our structures and in our programs. The ITUC has made progress on many of these areas in the last years, in the recent years. But today, the odds are stacked against working people, and we need to do more. The core of our work is international trade union solidarity. International trade union solidarity. In a world where capital and companies are global, where our income and rights are systematically attacked in a coordinated manner by governments and employers, the way forward for trade unions is to strengthen our international cooperation and action. That's what our members, your members, expect from us. Workers of the world unite. That was already nearly 200 years ago the slogan of the first trade unions. It is not different today. The statement from the Melbourne Congress sets the stage, sets the parameters for our work ahead. We have many priorities and objectives, too many to list here in this speech. But there are some that I want to especially highlight a little bit more. First, the world is falling behind on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We have taken our message to the UN General Assembly just a few weeks ago, where we were present, but it's not enough. The SDGs are for people. They are for our members and for our future members. We must step up the fight for the world to meet these goals. Secondly, we are also painfully aware that younger people in particular are excluded from shared prosperity, and that we face the chilling reality that for the first time in living memory, generations to come will be poorer than today's generations unless we act. Young people need jobs, jobs with social security, jobs in the formal and not in the informal economy like today's reality for hundreds of millions of young people. They need economic opportunities and security, and education and training as part of lifelong learning that will enable them to make and find their rightful place in the economy. And a key to this is enabling them to find their rightful place within the trade union movement. Young people want to join unions, and where we can make a difference to overcoming obstacles to organize them, and indeed all workers, we will have to do so. Third, our agenda will also be focused on the women's full and equal economic participation and women leadership. The situation of women at the labor market is worldwide still critical. Women's labor force participation is below 50%, and women's share of unpaid care work has risen to the value of 9% of global GDP. I was last week at the Congress of the International Domestic Workers Federation. I heard the stories of unpaid work, of no defined working time, no social protection, and violence at the workplace. The global pay gap is still near 20%, and investment in quality public care services and social protection, the promotion of equal pay for equal work of equal value, and the introduction of minimum living wages with stronger collective bargaining remain the solutions to eliminate this discrimination. The ITUC is committed to the elimination of gender-based violence in the world of work. This is a focal point for women to organize and to see legislative and workplace justice. Fourth, the coming generations will also bear the terrible brunt of climate change. The ITUC must continue to work on a progressive climate agenda. But as a trade union, we will have to guarantee that our members and the workers affected by this agenda will have a new job, a new future. No one should be left behind. No region should be left behind. A real just transition, not in nice declarations, but in action, will be our guiding agenda. Our climate action must go hand in hand with new jobs for our members. And fifth, let's not be tricked into the thinking that there are not enough resources in the world to realize our agenda. Trillions of dollars are secretly stashed in tax havens. Progressive taxation is often a dream rather than a reality, and few people have amassed unimaginable fortunes. We, the workers, created that wealth, and we want it back. Fair and progressive taxation will unlock more than enough wealth to meet the needs of all by returning the money stolen from workers to the common good. I'm also very mindful that the ITUC is one part of a powerful global movement, and we must maximize our cooperation and solidarity with our sister organizations, the Global Union Federations and ITUC. We each have our role to play, and we can only maximize the impacts of each organization by working together and through solidarity actions to colleagues under threat and in need. By working together, we can also push companies to respect rights and due diligence obligations. As ITUC, we must lead, but cooperation with our sisters and brothers from the Gulf will be crucial to have broad and effective action. Dear brothers, dear sisters, dear colleagues, finally, I would like to say a few words about our internal agenda. As I already have said in my manifesto, the strength of the trade union movement lies in unity. Our diversity is on the one hand a challenge, but it's also a strength. Dialogue. We must take every opinion on board, regardless whether it comes from global north or global south, regardless of whether it comes from a large organization or a small one. Every opinion counts. And building unity takes time, but it creates consensus and strength. It creates ownership on the decisions we take. Our 340 national centers are the center of this organization. You are the center of this organization. You need to be involved, and you need to feel involved. You need to feel home in what we do and what we say. That has always been my guiding principle, and it will continue to be my guiding principle in the coming years. Listening, dialogue, understanding. The role of our regional organizations and structures will especially be important in this regard. They are the layer between the ITUC and the national member organizations. Close contact and cooperation between the ITUC and its regional organizations is crucial, and this is high on my list of priorities. We must also continue to work on transparency and democratic decision-making structures. Having transparently made decisions is key. That creates trust. Our constitution and rules are the bedrock of the ITUC. At the same time, we should not have to continually refer back to them. Transparency, consultation, and trust will be my watchwords as General Secretary. And does it have to be repeated? Integrity. Our credibility to act or speak up against tax evading companies and corrupt governments will depend on our own integrity. We need to lead by example. And we have a tough agenda ahead of us regarding the financial situation. My intention is to strengthen the financial situation of the ITUC. However, it can only succeed if every organization, every region makes its fair contribution to the ITUC. I see today too many illogical differences, and this puts pressure on our financial stability. This will be one of my internal priorities in the coming months. And I count on the responsibility of every organization to make a correct contribution to the work we do as ITUC. Because without sufficient financial resources, we cannot realize our heavy agenda. And the hundreds of millions of workers and members we represent expect a strong and action-ready ITUC. Indeed, action. Here too, the ITUC must be able to realize its added value. We are the spokesperson of the global worker. They expect a present and visible ITUC, not a paper tiger, but a combative and active ITUC. We must continue to do our political work in international organizations, but we must also be visible to our millions of members. And to conclude, the global trade union movement, led by the ITUC, will act in solidarity. An attack on one of us is an attack on all. The voice of the ITUC will be loud and clear against any violation. Solidarity is our weapon. Who can stop us if we take action together? And if we pull together as one? Who can stop us? I expect real solidarity, for example, at this crucial moment around the Right to Strike campaign and action. Together we can achieve a lot. And I count on all of you, and you can count on my full commitment as well of that of the entire ITUC team. And let me then also use this opportunity to thank already my colleagues in this team. First of all, the 3 Deputy General Secretaries, Owen, Jordania, and Eric. They have supported me a lot in these last 5 months. I must say that, and I really thank them for that. And we will continue to work as a team together. I can assure you that. It's a teamwork, as I said in the beginning. I also would like to thank our dear President, Akiko-san, and the Vice Presidents, Cathy and Antonio, for their contribution. Very valuable, very constructive, good dialogue. We will continue to work together as a team, together with you, because that's the key for our success. So colleagues, the values we stand for, the very concept of trade unionism, the right to strike, and the quest for justice and equity command overwhelming public support around the world. The support for trade unions is growing. We must and we can transform that support into a momentum to organize more members. Members are the strength of our organization. It's now time to increase efforts to organize even more workers. All together, we will work for our new social contract to create a world that we can take pride in. I thank you for your trust, and let's start to work together. Thank you very much.